You're listening to Covering the Fields with your host, Joe Ellison.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Covering the Field, the weekly program that analyzes all sports, handicaps them, and makes and reviews predictions. I'm your host, Joe Ellison, and today we're going to talk about pro football, college football, Major League Baseball, NASCAR, betting strategies for parlays, and our You Got Hosed segment. We'd like to remind you listeners to email us at coveringthefield@gmail.com. Please give us your feedback, tell us your You Got Hosed stories, and visit our brand new Covering the Field website. And a special thank you to all the firefighters and first responders battling the Nevada and California wildfires. Now, kicking things off this week, I'd like to introduce our National Football League expert, Charles O'Laughlin. How are you doing today, Charles?
I'm great, Joe. How are you doing today?
Terrific. Well, Charles, the first week of the season certainly started off with a bang with the Dallas-Tampa Bay game Thursday, and definitely finished off with another bang with the Baltimore-Las Vegas game Monday night, and there were plenty more fireworks and surprises in between. What were your highlights and assessments from week one?
The Dallas Cowboys look really good. They're not going to have a problem finding the end zone this year. It surprised me that they were able to hold their own with Tampa like that. Other than that, the Raiders look like they can play some defense. You know, that's always been their Achilles heel. Derek Carr came through. That pass should have been a completion and went right through the wide receiver's hands that first go around. Niners let the Lions come back. I was not a huge fan of that. Bengals beat up on the Vikings. Browns unfortunately lost, but they did cover. It was a lot this week.
Well, the upsets were interesting. Certainly the biggest ones being Pittsburgh at Buffalo, Miami at New England, New Orleans over Green Bay, and Las Vegas against Baltimore. What'd you think about those?
Good games. The Steelers surprised me the most. I definitely thought it would be a little bit, if it was going to stay low scoring like that, I didn't think the Steelers were going to be able to win, but I think that's after watching that game and seeing how that team runs, I think that's how they're going to win games this year, is by keeping it low scoring and kind of just trying to get one or two touchdowns out of people. So that's something to pay attention to, Steelers unders.
Well, the last 14 consecutive quarterbacks to be drafted number one overall, like Jacksonville's Trevor Lawrence, they all lost their first game, and they were favored, Jacksonville. Was that a surprise?
Yes and no, Joe. It's a surprise in the fact that shows you the Texans are a lot better than at least I thought they were. A lot of people think they were. But it also goes to show that the Jags, it's a freshman coach, freshman quarterback, both rookies, first-timers. The Jags roster is not that actual deep in talent. So, yes and a no. Good job for Houston. Houston's got the Browns this week and the Cardinals next week. Both have great front sevens, can get after the quarterback, and both offenses that can score. So fading the Texans these next couple weeks is something to look at. We'll see what kind of team they are when they start going against these more competitive players.
Yeah, Houston and Detroit were supposed to be the worst teams, and they both look fairly decent. Houston even winning. We'll have to see who the worst team is after all. Cleveland is now 0-16-1 in their last 17 openers, but hey, they covered the point spread, so it wasn't a total loss. It was great to see doubleheaders on both CBS and Fox networks for the first time ever, and replay officials can now fix bad calls immediately. So definitely some improvements for the NFL. So Charles, did your Covering the Field spread predictions turn out well last week?
They went okay, Joe. I went 1-1 in college. South Carolina ended up coming back in the second half and winning against East Carolina by 3. When I told you to go get that number, it was at 2.5. So good job, Gamecocks. Other than that, I did take Florida over the South Florida Bulls. Fortunately, they only won by 22. It was 28.5 was the cover, so I lost that one because I told you to take the Florida Gators. Other than that, the NFL, I told you to pound the Cardinals over. Unfortunately, that's the one that didn't come through, and that's the one that I had the most money on. So, unfortunately, that lost. Matt Prater came up with a field goal left in the fourth with 11 minutes left. Went wide left, if I'm not mistaken. There was 11 minutes left. I'm like, man, They're going to score. Somebody's going to score. Both teams get a couple possessions. Nothing came of it, unfortunately. So that's where I got hosed there. Other than that, the Niners came through. If you got them at 7.5, it closed on Sunday at 9. So if you got that 9, they got you on the back door. Browns covered, and then my Monday nights were Raiders on the money, and I took the over 50.5, and that overtime really helped me come through on both of those.
Well, I took New Orleans plus the 3.5 points against Green Bay and won outright 38-3, no less. But I did lose with New England, like you said, -3 against Miami. Patriots outrushed the Dolphins by 50 yards, outpassed them by 80, led the time of possession by 13.5 minutes, but too many penalties, 2 ill-timed fumbles. Those are the difference in that 1-point loss. New England is now 7-2 at home in their last 9 versus Miami. It looked like a good bet on paper. Didn't turn out that way. So, Charles, who are you taking this week?
Yeah, Joe. Well, I'm going to start with college. It's the one I like, and I also like it on a teaser. I'm going to take Florida and Bama. I'm going to take Florida with the points plus 15. You can tease that up, get 3 touchdowns on the head at 21 if you want to put that on a teaser ticket. SEC football, Florida's really been hyping themselves up for this game, and there's a few people out there, and of course they're in the state of Florida, but think that think that the Florida Gators can pull this game off. Then we're going to go to the NFL. I'm taking that Chargers-Cowboys over. It took the Washington football team everything they had last week to keep the Chargers at 20. So definitely going to take that. I'm going to take the Broncos versus the Jags. I'm taking the Broncos with 6 points. I'm going to roll with the Patriots this week. I think they're a lot better than the Jets. Belichick coming out from a loss against a rookie quarterback. He can coach his defense up to give him problems. I'm taking the Saints-Panthers over. It's 44 right now. You can tease that down, get that into the 30s. I think that's a good play. Jameis Winston wants to eat another W today. I like Saints overs a lot this year. And I'm going to keep rolling with the Dolphins like I did last week on a teaser, but this week I don't think you need to tease them. You're going to give me +3 against the Bills. I'll take it. I may even money line that one. I think we might have a problem out in Buffalo.
Tomorrow night, I like Washington -3.5 at home against the New York Giants. Even though quarterback Daniel Jones is 4-0 head-to-head against the football team, I'll also predict Giant coach Joe Judge won't make it till the end of the season. He'll be the first one to get fired. And to the chagrin of my producer, I'm taking the Cincinnati Bengals +2 at Chicago. It was 3. Hopefully you got the 3. But if the Bears stubbornly stick with Andy Dalton as starting quarterback, Matt Nagy will be the next head coach out on the street.
That's a really good bet, Joe. I do like that bet a lot.
So, Charles, you know how I like to throw stats at you and our listeners. So here goes. Since 1978, when the NFL switched to a 16-game schedule, if a team wins its first game of the season, it makes the playoffs 53% of the time. 11 of the 14 playoff teams last year won their first game. Conversely, 24% of teams that lost their first game went to the playoffs, including the other 3 last year. Since 78, if you win your first game of the season, you have a 32% shot at winning your division, and if you lose it, the odds go down to 14%. Last year, all 8 division winners won their first game. Any thoughts on any of those stats?
So if we look at the NFC West, they're all 1-0, so we would have know who's coming out of the playoffs there because everybody's possibly winning the division right now, right? How about the East? You got to look at, are you worried about your Cowboys now that they're down 0-1?
Not at all.
Not at all, okay. Other than that, so yeah, I think there's going to be some squads that were worst to first this year, and I think there's going to be some squads that didn't make the playoffs last year that will make them this year. I like Teddy Two Gloves looks good out there in Denver. The Raiders good. If they get hot out of the NFC, you got the Arizona Cardinals. I think the Chargers look good. Chargers made the playoffs last year, didn't they?
No, they did not.
Didn't. So there's a few squads that can make it out this year.
Well, for 31 straight years, believe it or not, at least 4 teams that missed the playoffs reached the postseason the following year. And in 17 of the last 18 years, at least 2 teams that missed the playoffs went on to win their division, including 24 that went from last to first. Certainly not going to be any surprise to see teams like the 49ers, let's say, Who was in the Dallas's division? I think actually the Eagles finished last, and here they are 1-0. So I know it's early, but you just never know.
You never know, but don't put your monies on that Niners team. They do not look good. It's kind of stinky football out there. I don't know how you let the Lions come back like that. Everybody else in that division kind of crushed their competition and showed you that why the NFC West is the best division in football. So stick away from them Niners, man. They're trying to figure things out.
Thank you, Charles, for your insight, and we'll catch up with you later on our You Got Host segment. Next up on the show is our college football handicapper, Big Richard Martin. How's it going today, Richard?
I'm doing great, Joe. Thanks for having me on the show today.
So the big news this week had to be the firing of USC head coach Clay Helton. He didn't even make it to the middle of September. Big Richard, what happened?
Well, I don't know what happened. I don't think anybody knows what happens unless you're inside that USC athletic director's office. Black Monday usually comes in November, not in September. And it certainly doesn't come with a loss to Stanford. Stanford's not even in the north. I mean, USC still controls their own destiny. Something's going on. Clay Helton's been at USC since 2010. I think they wanted to get a change, and something happened inside that locker room. I don't know. But let's look and see who might get that job. We have Luke Fickell from Cincinnati. He's the head candidate that we think might get the Bearcats. They've had a great couple years. He looks like the head candidate maybe to go over there. Or you got Bob Stoops from Oklahoma. He's not working right now. Or you got Matt Campbell from Iowa State, or some of the top names that are out there to replace at USC.
Well, if they were just going to fire him in the middle of September, shouldn't they have just fired him at the end of last year? Obviously, this was in the works.
Something's not going right inside the Trojans locker room, that's for sure.
From one disgraced, storied football program to another, Florida State last week lost at home to Jacksonville State. Big Richard, how bad are the Seminoles?
Well, I think, the Seminoles have been bad for the last decade since Jimbo Fisher was coaching at Florida State. So the last decade, they've been on the downhill slide. So not really surprising there, but I think the question is Notre Dame. Notre Dame got, taken down to the wire in overtime against Florida State. So we know Florida State's horrible, but, where's Notre Dame stand in all this? I think that's the big question.
Also was losing late to Toledo last week, too, Notre Dame. So they might be struggling this year.
Yeah, I think they need a little bit more touchdown Jesus going out there in Notre Dame.
So, Big Richard, almost half of the preseason top 25 teams have already lost. Was this to be expected, or is this like an aberration?
I don't know. I just think it's great to have the fans back in the stadium. I think a lot of home teams are standing up and making, having the home field advantage. It's electric in the stadium. So, yeah, a lot of teams are losing, but we wanted parity. But, when it comes down to Alabama and Georgia and Oklahoma, I think that's our big three that are also 2-0 right now.
Well, it's like a yearly guarantee that 10 out of the preseason top 25 won't be there at the end. So might as well start off early in the season with these big upsets. Nobody really knows who's really good yet, and we're just finding out.
Well, we're finding out, and also we had COVID last season, so they didn't have much of a camp in the beginning of the season there. With the COVID protocols, half the team only played 7 games, so we're all trying to figure this out, and let's go get going on our picks. We're starting to see what's going on down in the stadiums now.
Yeah. So, Big Richard, how did your point spread predictions end up last week?
Well, won 3 and lost 2. I think everybody lost on that Ohio State game. They were at the Horseshoe with the Big O, and they just laid a big bagel out there. The question is Oregon that good, Joe, or is Ohio State defense that bad?
Well, Ohio State's defense has struggled big time, Minnesota and Oregon. So I think that's where the problem lies.
So Justin Fields is gone now, so where's the leadership? We got a brand new quarterback there, but he looks pretty decent. He's still doing good in the pocket. The question is the defense. They just put out today that we can fix this, but you should have fixed it last week before you played Oregon at home.
Well, yeah. So, Big Richard, what are your selections for this week now?
All right. Well, let's start with Thursday. The Raging Cajuns are at home against the University of Ohio Bobcats. They're dropping 20 points. Levi Lewis is their quarterback. He's going strong. He has 3 touchdowns with 0 interceptions. So he has that senior leadership, and I think they get it done. They drop that 20, and they cover that easily over Ohio.
Yeah, I like that one too. Ohio just lost at home to Duquesne by 2 points last week. Duquesne is a basketball school, not a Division I football school.
Yeah, not a lot of NFL players coming out of Duquesne.
I doubt it very much, yes. Any other selections?
Well, let's go to Friday. Okay, we have the Maryland Tarpons. Tua's little brother, Tualale Tagovailoa, is going to Illinois. As you know, Illinois has they're at home and they're strong at home. They did lose to my University of Texas San Antonio, was a big upset 2 weeks ago. They did lose last week to Virginia, but I think they go home, they get it settled down, and they get the win, take that 7.5 against Maryland.
So that's Friday. Moving on to Saturday.
Saturday, what about those Cincinnati Bearcats? They're going to Indiana Hoosiers. The -3.5. I think Cincinnati's a strong team. Let's go with the Road Warriors this week. We're going to take Cincinnati. We're also going to take Virginia Tech. They're going to West Virginia. West Virginia lost to Maryland. I think Maryland's a much better team than West Virginia. Virginia Tech should be able to cover that 3-point spread against West Virginia.
Do we have more for Saturday?
Oh, Saturday.
Pretty long slate.
Yeah, Saturday's loaded. Let's go ahead and tell me what you think about the Nevada Wolfpack and what's going on there.
Well, I see Kansas State's quarterback hurt and out. And that's why Nevada's favored.
Exactly. As we said last week, we thought Kansas City would be a heavy favorite, but Skylar Skywalker Thompson, he's out indefinitely with a knee injury. They said he might come back at the end of the year, but he's definitely not playing. So who do they bring in? Will Howard. Will Howard came in for him last year. When he came in, he had 2 wins and 3 losses last year. He has struggled. He had 8 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. So now we're coming in to the game against Nevada. It looks like a perfect setting for Nevada to get it done, but let's don't forget about Deuce Vaughn. Deuce Vaughn is an electric. We talked about him last week. I think they also have their safety that came back who had he had a targeting against Stanford. So when he came back and he got it done, that was Daniel Green. So he's a top skill secondary player. And then also Felix Andake Uzama. He had 3 sacks last week in that win against Southern Illinois. So they did get some cheap touchdowns. Will Howard did throw a touchdown. No one from Kansas State has thrown a touchdown this year, except for Will Howard, but he threw it to the wrong team. And it was a pick 6, and that's when the momentum started coming. But I think that the Kansas State, that large crowd of Manhattan, gets it done. I'm going against your Nevada team this week, and I'm going to take those 2 points, just like 82% of the public is taking Kansas State this week.
How dare you bet against Nevada? How terrible.
Hey, it's all about the money, Joe. It's all about the money.
Do you have any more choices?
Well, I'm going to go against our Charles NFL expert, who he likes Florida, and I am going to go the other way. Alabama is strong. Florida's lost their last 6 games to Alabama. Alabama is definitely the only powerhouse team that you can see. And do you know, Joe, who is the last team to repeat undefeated back-to-back in college football?
Oh, I'm going to guess Alabama.
That is not correct.
Oh, darn.
We're going to have to go all the way back to the powerhouse days of Nebraska.
Oh, wow.
Was the last time we've had 2 back-to-back undefeated. And I think, we have Bryce Young, looks so great. He has 571 yards this year, 7 touchdowns. He's electric. They go to Florida, drop that 15.5. I love Alabama in this game. I think they established that they are going to be something to look forward to for a repeat for the state championship, for the national championship.
I hate betting against Alabama. It doesn't seem to work for me.
Unless they can get Tim Tebow. I mean, Tim Tebow was 2-1 against Alabama, so if they get touchdown Tebow to come back, they might have a chance.
Right. Any other choices?
I'm going to go with my long shot pick this week. We're going to go with the Kansas Jayhawks. They're at home at Lawrence against Baylor. They're getting +17. Jason Bean is a starting quarterback. Last week on Friday night, he was electric against Coastal Carolina. Their defense did struggle, but with that +17 and Jason Bean has 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He has 2 rushing touchdowns, and he's rushed for 156 yards. So I say he's going to be running wild in Lawrence, and they give him a close game. Baylor might win, but I love that 17 points. And my last pick is my University of Texas San Antonio, 2-0. They are 13.5 favorites against Middle Tennessee. Keep rolling with those Roadrunners. They're going to make you money every week.
Well, I've been watching a little more college football this year than I normally do. And I'm trying to identify bad and overrated teams. So I actually came up with a bunch of picks this week. I'm taking Army -33 against UConn. Connecticut could be the worst team in the country, Division One. The coach, Randy Edsel, already abandoned the team, jumped off that sinking ship. Toledo minus 14.5, just played Notre Dame tough against Colorado State. Colorado State lost at home by 19 to South Dakota State earlier in the season. Stanford minus 11 at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt just beat Colorado State, but that's the only reason they won is because they were playing Colorado State. Vandy lost at home to East Tennessee State by 20 earlier in the year. I like Stanford. Boise State minus 5 against Oklahoma State. I took Oklahoma State last week because they were playing Tulsa and they had just lost to UC Davis, but Oklahoma State only won by 5 in that game. Definitely struggled. I like Boise State to put a whooping on Oklahoma State. Arkansas State plus 16.5 at Washington. Here's this Washington team. Lost at Michigan pretty big last week. Lost at home to Montana by 6. And now Arkansas State, who I'm pretty sure is better than Montana, is coming in getting 16.5 points. I like that. Tulane, I think, is underrated. Plus 14.5. They played Oklahoma tough. They're at Mississippi. I'm going to take Tulane. And then Oklahoma versus Nebraska, the 22 they're laying. Nebraska tried to get out of that game, playing it. There's a reason for that. They don't want to get whipped up on. Well, they're going to play that game. I like Oklahoma. And yes, Nevada at Kansas State. And tomorrow, Louisiana laying the 20 against Ohio.
Yeah, I think that game might be a little bit more exciting than that Giants-Washington game in the NFL.
Yes. So finally, Big Richard, do you have any NFL point spread picks this week?
Well, I'm with Charles. I love the Broncos. I think they're going to go in and take care of business in Jacksonville. I mean, Jacksonville, they're at home, but, I mean, do they really have a home field advantage? I mean, there'll be more or just as much orange and blue out that stadium. You look at that pool in the end zone, you'll see a bunch of orange bathing suits in there. A lot of people are going to be going with the Broncos there. I think that Teddy Bridgewater gets it done. They're rolling right now. They're going to roll this week. I'm going to double down on the Patriots. They did hose me last week, fumbling, unpatriot-like, fumbling the ball in the fourth quarter, costing them that game. I think if they go in and score a touchdown, they cover that 2.5 points easy. And then the last one, what about Cleveland? What's the point spread was?
So the spread is 12.5.
12.5. And then that's minus 110 with 12.5. I mean, let's don't get crazy with Houston winning their first game. Cleveland's going back to the dog pound. They lost a close game in Kansas City, but that's a tough place to play. That's one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. They're going back home. They're going to restore order. They're going to pound Houston, take them with a parlay, and just do the San Francisco Giants on all your parlays because they win every night just about. So take the San Francisco Giant baseball team.
So is Houston going to be the Jacksonville of last year, win the first game and then lose all the rest of their games? Or do you see Houston actually being a fairly decent team?
Well, they're far from fairly decent, but I think that they might squeak out another couple games this season. I mean, they are professionals, and I think they did look decent, but they played Jacksonville.
Thank you, Big Richard, and we'll have you on again next week on Covering the Field.
Yeah, we'll be at the Blue Bull, I believe, again, and just want to put a shout out. They put a great spread out last Sunday. We had my Aunt Donna's Bronco biscuits, and they turned out to be wonderful. Everybody enjoyed them, and the Broncos won. So take another biscuit next week, and let's get another win for the Broncos.
So, Ronnie, before we get to the division and wildcard races, I do believe there was a Major League record broken last week. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, Joe. It was the 9th no-hitter, which is a record in 1 year. The Milwaukee beat Cleveland 3-0. Cleveland now has been shut out or no-hit 3 times this year out of the 9. Corbin Burns, who is actually second in ERA at 2.25, pitched 8 innings, 14 strikeouts. And then the save guy, Josh Hader, came in for the save. So,
is that also a record for Cleveland being no-hit 3 times?
Yes, that is a record. And what's really interesting is that the starting pitcher for them, Zach Plesac, who's been around quite a long time, was the starter in all 3 of those no-hitters. So,
horrible luck for him.
Correct. Yes.
He seems to get hosed quite a bit.
Yeah, he did.
Definitely. So that was 1884 when they had 8 no-hitters and they were tied. And that was, we talked about this in past shows. That was the year where they just switched to overhand pitching.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, we did hit that on one of the other shows. It was only the second time that Milwaukee has thrown a no-hitter in their history. The last one was in 1987.
All right. Do we know who threw that one?
Actually, yes, it was Juan, and let me get his last name right, Nieves.
Oh, Juan Nieves.
Yeah.
I remember him.
He's actually an assistant pitching coach today for the Detroit Tigers, and he was the one that pitched the no-hitter back then.
So how is your new buddy Max Scherzer doing, being a Dodger fan?
Well, he's doing awesome. He leads the National League in ERA at 2.17. He just the other day hit 3,000 strikeouts, which only 19 pitchers in history have hit 3,000 strikeouts, have thrown for that. Actually, there's more perfect games in history than pitchers that have thrown 3,000 strikeouts. There's been 23 perfect games. So, yeah, that was pretty great. He's 6-0 since he's been with the Dodgers. They won all 8 games he started. So he's doing, a great job. 0.88 ERA in those games. That's like less than 1 run per 9 innings. So it was a pretty good day for him and a good pickup for the Dodgers, no doubt. Also, he's the second fastest to get 3,000 strikeouts. Randy Johnson, whom I'm sure you are well aware of, was the first one or the fastest one to get to 3,000 strikeouts.
So are any players approaching any milestones we should be following before the season ends?
Well, right now, Vlad Guerrero Jr. for Toronto, we've talked about him before. He's got a shot at the Triple Crown. Obviously, there's still anywhere from 16 to 18 games to go per team. And right now, he's first in home runs. He's tied for second in average and tied for third in RBIs. So, and a Triple Crown is coming in first in those 3 categories.
So only 5 players have actually got the Triple Crown. Is that right?
No, that's not. That's 5 players since 1947.
Okay.
So that's a long time for only 5 players. Altogether, there's been 27.
Oh, wow.
That have won the Triple Crown since 1878.
So we've been following Miguel Cabrera, trying to get 3,000 hits and his 500 home runs in the same season. Is he close enough? Is there enough time?
He's been getting some hits, and he's still got 25 to go, and they have 17 games left. So it's a possibility. And what's interesting about that is that he was the last one to win the Triple Crown in 2012.
And we had one other guy we were following was this kid Franco on the Rays. He was on a streak.
Right, Wander Franco. He's now hurt. He's on the 10-day injured list. He'll be coming back. It was some left hamstring tightness, but he set the record for getting on base more than anybody, 39 times in a row. So that streak will still be alive when he comes back. That is the second longest for getting that many. Frank Robinson, who I'm sure you're well aware of, got there faster as a 20 years or younger player. And actually the record all time is from what you think, and I also agree, is probably the greatest hitter of all time, Ted Williams. Actually has the longest streak in history. He did 84 games getting on base in 1949. So.
Yes, I would have to say Ted Williams, the greatest hitter of all time. Certainly would have had even greater numbers had he not gone to 2 different wars, and he was a fighter pilot.
That's correct, yeah. And I've talked about Roberto Clemente. I actually had a little piece that I wrote on the website, the Covering the Field website, about Roberto Clemente, and it's actually Roberto Clemente Day today, where they hand out awards one for every team member. One from every team gets it. And it's just for somebody that's been just has great character and has helped out the community. And so today is Roberto Clemente Day. He was an amazing player, defensively, offensively, died very young, which we had talked about before, in relief for an earthquake.
He got his 3,000th hit, is helping his country people on a mission. I guess they put too many supplies on the plane, and it crashed. Horrible story.
Very sad. He was like, I think 39 years old.
He was still playing great for 39.
Totally. He would have played for several more years, no doubt. He was great. One of those 5-tool players that could hit for power and run and steal, and had a great arm, a great outfielder.
So hate to get on a touchy subject, but without getting into too much detail, are we going to be seeing Trevor Bauer anytime soon?
No, he's done for the year. So they're still paying him, and he hasn't been convicted of anything. But he won't come back this year.
So that's part of the Dodger pitching staff.
That's true.
That was maybe part of the reason why they got Max Scherzer, because they kind of knew Bauer wasn't coming back.
Well, they might have got him anyway. I mean, Kershaw's been hurt for a while. He just came back and pitched and did well, but they limited his pitches and his innings. But they might have still done it, because they lost that kid Dustin May at the beginning of the year, who was just doing phenomenal, and he's going to be phenomenal, but he's out for the year. So I'm not sure they wouldn't have gone for Scherzer anyway. I mean, it was great also to get Trey Turner with him. Just that's amazing, So, and they've both done a phenomenal job since they've been with the Dodgers. So,
of course, they are the Dodgers. They very well could have got Scherzer anyway.
Totally.
I totally agree.
Yeah, they always have the money, so
they always have it. Yep.
They could have, and no doubt.
So, Ronnie, how are the division and wildcard races shaping up now?
Well, it's we're getting down there now to game wise. What's interesting is Toronto, who we talked about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. earlier. That's the team he's on. They've just been on fire, and they right up there now with Boston and the Yankees, chasing that one of the 2 wild cards. So that's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens. They actually already won earlier today. I was just looking at it earlier, and they already played and won today too. So they're doing great. That's going to be interesting. Tampa Bay's pretty much got the division wrapped up, as does the Chicago White Sox as in the Central. And then when it comes to the West, it's still a battle. Houston hasn't got it wrapped up yet, but Seattle and Oakland are still chasing them. It's 6.5, 7 games, respectively. But obviously Seattle and Oakland really in the wild card at 3 and 3.5 games, respectively. So that'll be interesting. The wild card is like, a lot of teams going for those 2 spots in the American League. Then when it comes to the National League, Atlanta's still got the lead over Philadelphia and the Mets, 4.5 and 5.5 respectively. And then the wild card, Philadelphia and New York, 3 and 4 respectively, chasing the wild card in the National League. Obviously, the Dodgers got the one of those wrapped up, and San Diego and Cincinnati from the Central are battling for, and actually St. Louis now. They're all battling for that other wild card. So Milwaukee's pretty much got that Central wrapped up. And, of course, the Dodgers and Giants, that's not over yet. It's 2.5 games separate them, and there's 17, 18 games to go. So we'll see what happens. It's pretty exciting.
So, Ronnie, who should handicappers be betting on and against right now? Who's on fire and who's just totally finished?
Well, obviously the Giants are on fire. They've won 9 in a row. So they're playing San Diego. I thought San Diego would play them a little tougher. They've already won the first 2 games. They're playing tonight and tomorrow. It's a 4-game series. San Diego's really been falling. And they've got a lot of good hitters and a lot of good play. It's pretty sad. They were expected to do a lot better, and they were up until about a month ago. So and again, Toronto, as a team that's been is on a roll, has been winning and looking good. So there's a lot of other teams, and obviously the Dodgers and Giants are both playing really well, but there's a lot of other teams that just kind of in the middle of the road chasing wild cards. Nobody's like, they win some, they lose some. Nobody's getting on any heavy streaks except for Toronto and the Giants in winning. And the other teams have been kind of, and the Giants and Dodgers, but the other teams has just all been, they win a couple, they lose a couple, especially the teams fighting for the wild card. They've been, nobody's got on a streak lately. So we'll see what happens.
Anybody like completely had it, like Baltimore? They're just not, they went on that 19-game losing streak. Is anybody on a losing streak? We should be paying attention to.
Nobody's on one like that. A lot of those, the teams at the bottom of their divisions get on some losing streaks, not that bad, and have some very poor records. Some of them 40 to 50 games below 500 ball. That's pretty crazy, And on the other side, it's crazy that the Giants are 45 games above 500. The Dodgers are 40 games above 500. So it's two extremes there.
Well, thank you, Ronnie. And we'll have you on again next week. Talk about some more Major League Baseball.
Right on, Joe. Thanks for having me.
My final guest today is all-around sports lover and betting strategist, Gator Gates. How are you doing today, Gator?
Oh, I'm doing okay, Joe, but I'll get into that a little later. Thanks for asking.
For purposes of this segment, Gator, we're going to assume our listeners have never placed a wager on football before, okay?
Yeah, okay. Sounds fair.
So, Gator, during every football season, we notice that the bins get filled with numerous parlay cards. But what if you just want to bet on one or two teams? How does that work?
Well, if you want to do that, you want to go up to the counter and go to the ticket writer and bet off of what we call the boards.
Just make a straight bet.
Correct. You can do a parlay at the counter as well. But most of those cards, you have to have at least 3 teams or higher to be able to play off the card.
Yes, almost always, if you're betting one team, it's minus 110. In other words, you will bet $11 to win $10. Now, the guys who bet tons of money generally, the ones walking in with briefcases full of $100 bills, they're the ones who believe in the straight bet.
Oh, correct. The reason I say that, Joe, is because when you do a parlay, and just for argument's sake, let's take any game off the board. You're either going to win it or lose it, so we'll call that 50-50, just for argument's sake. So let's put another team on there. Now your chances go down to 25%. Put another team on there, 3 teams, now you have a 6.5% chance of winning. So the straight bets, you have a 50-50 shot of hitting it.
Well, how about if you like 2 teams? What would be your strategy for betting when you have like a side and a total, let's say, on a Monday night?
Personally, I would do them both separately. You don't win as much money that way. Putting them together boosts up your tickets, you're winning. But you have to win both of those. At least if you do them separately and you hit one and miss one, at least you'll get some money back.
I totally agree. Yes, if you bet the 2-team parlay, you get 1 out of 2, you lose your money. You hit both, you win, just like the parlay, maybe a little less. And if you lose both, well, your picks were terrible. You deserve to lose anyway.
Correct, I agree.
So, Gator, when we get to the 3-team parlays, that's when the half-point parlay card kicks in. Do you have any strategies for either the William Hill or Carson Valley Inn card we find here in Carson City?
The only strategy that I can think, Joe, is that the odds on the cards are different than the boards, obviously. The reason is the cards, you cannot change the cards. The board, you'll see that a team on the card's at 3.5, and you'll see on the board that they're at 4 or 4.5. Depending on which way you are betting, sometimes it's better to go on the card, and sometimes it's better to go off of the board. So it all depends. It all depends on what teams you like.
Well, when you compare the cards, the William Hill parlay card pays better or equal than the Carson Valley Inn card every step of the way. And you can bet as many as 12 teams on the William Hill card. If you're betting a 3-teamer, it's good to note, though, that the payoff is better betting off the board. But the most important thing to factor in is which point spreads are in your favor. Don't be greedy. An extra half point or point can be the difference between winning or losing your parlay.
Or pushing, correct.
Right. A push is better than a loss.
Yes, it is.
Every other step of the way from 4-teamers on up, it pays better off the card than the board. But again, I'd say don't be greedy. If the spreads are more in your favor off the board, bet off the board. So what if you get paid less? At least you're getting paid. Also, it's important to note that if you win anything more than an 8-teamer, you have to fill out a tax form. So win a $2 9-teamer, you fill out a tax form. Win a $10 8-teamer, you don't have to fill out a tax form. It's a very bizarre situation. It's not about the money, it's about the odds.
Correct.
So Gator, let's move on to NASCAR. We're 2 races into the playoff. So what's going on this weekend?
Well, this weekend is the last race of the first round, the round of 16. True, they're going to be at Bristol Saturday night, which I love. That's one of my bucket lists. I would love to go to a race at Bristol. But anyways, the first race was at Darlington. Danny Hamlin won, so he's in the next round of 12. And my guy, Truex, he won Richmond last week, so he's in the next round of 12. So we're going to have 10 drivers at Bristol trying to make the cut to make it to that round, and that track is just so fun to watch.
So who looks like they're in trouble of getting eliminated?
Pretty much everybody. You got to stay out of that wreck, Joe. We're talking about a short track Bristol where, to me, you might as well be doing figure 8 racing.
Is anybody locked in to the next round?
Oh, yeah. Truex, who won at Richmond, and Danny Hamlin, who won at Darlington.
So only 2 guys are locked in?
They're the only ones locked in.
And the other 14 are duking it out?
Duking it out for 10 spots, correct.
Wow.
That's why it's going to be excellent to watch. And under the lights at Bristol, nothing like it. It's great.
Awesome. So,
Great
Gator,
action.
have there been any big pluses that have hit lately off the board?
Well, this story I really love, Joe. Man United lost to the Young Boys, which is a Swiss team in soccer, 2-1 yesterday in the UEFA Champions League. Now, Young Boys were at a plus 650. Now, the score was 1-1 going into injury time, and in the 95th minute, Jordan Pefok scored the game winner. Jordan, who plays on the U.S. men's national team, becomes the first American to score in the UEFA Champions League. Now, Cristiano Ronaldo did score the first goal in the 13th minute, but Man United did get a red card in the 35th minute. So what that means is that over half the time, Man United had to play with a man down. So congratulations to Jordan. It's been a long time coming for America.
So, Gator, were there any other strange occurrences off the betting boards lately?
Green Bay Packers, what a story they are. Anyways, on July 10th, Green Bay, they were at a plus 120. And on game day, Green Bay was at a minus 200. That is a boatload of money to get it to switch that much.
Yeah, well, I had the Saints, so I'm very happy with that. Didn't bet the money line, though. I wasn't really sure they were going to win the game, but I like the 3.5 points. Well, thank you, Gator. Appreciate your insight. And we'll have you on the You Got Host segment coming up.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate it, man.
So reviewing the U.S. Open tennis predictions, didn't fare too well. Novak Djokovic going for his calendar year Grand Slam, 21st Grand Slam to surpass Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. Didn't happen. Got swept in the final. I did hedge my bet, get some money back, but that was certainly a disappointment. Everybody was rooting for Novak. And the women's side, Leila Fernandez, the young girl, both teenagers, ended up in the final. Beat Naomi Osaka, my pick. I jumped on her bandwagon. Well, she also lost in the final, and she lost to Emma Raducanu, a girl who actually had to qualify just to get into the tournament. She had to play 10 matches, not the usual 7, to make it all the way. It's never happened before. The 18-year-old won. Huge upset ranked number 150 in the world. Should never happen. First time it's ever happened. Maybe it'll be the last time it ever happens. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's that time for the moments we've all been waiting for. The stories that make us furious about bets that appeared surely to be winners, but in the end, something went horribly wrong, and they ended up being losers. It's the segment we affectionately call You Got Hosed.
You got hosed.
So, Gator, do you have a You Got Hosed story this week?
Well, Joe, I was going to do the Dallas Cowboys Tampa Bay was going to be my You Got Hosed story. Anybody that betted on Dallas money line at 310 got hosed. But the IndyCar races are going to be at Laguna Seca this weekend on Sunday or down by Monterey. And last night I get home, my son calls me, and he scores 4 tickets to the event. $125 tickets, mind you. And last year, or before COVID, there would be no problem. I'd be able to go pack my bags and be gone. Now with COVID and being that it's the second week of football, there is no way that I can get out of here. So I think I got hosed worse than Dallas losing that game.
Well, me being a Dallas fan, there was that one push-off at the end, that play that went down to the 18-yard line. Pretty clear offensive pass interference. A lot of Dallas fans will tell you that. And then, of course, the field goal, McCarthy didn't call a timeout like every other coach in the league ices the kicker. Oh, but not McCarthy, and surely he kicks it right through the middle. Doesn't necessarily mean he was going to miss it, but I mean, that's just coaching 101. You ice the kicker. But that's not my You Got Hosed story. I can't say any of my really sportsbook wagers really hosed me because I had Dallas plus the points. I didn't have the money line. But certainly I got hosed in one of my fantasy football leagues. No thank you to Green Bay and the effort they put out last Sunday. I had the Packer defense, which was pretty good last year against Jameis Winston, a guy known for throwing 30 interceptions his last full season. The Packer D scored me -4 points. And kicker Mason Crosby got me 3 in a 38-3 drubbing. And San Francisco wide receiver Brandon Ayuk, 0 catches, 0 points. I lost by 5.3 points. I got hosed.
Yeah, I have Rodgers as my quarterback, but at least I didn't need his points. He gave me not even 2 points. It was 1 point something. So, yes, I feel your pain, Joe.
So, Charles, do you have a You Got Hosed moment?
I do this week, Joe. So like I said, I was sitting at the bar just 2 seats away from you. So I'm sure you probably heard me, and I think we were both on the same side of this bet. Matt Prater walks out in the fourth quarter with 11 minutes, 11 plus in the game, 43-yard field goal, and I'm thinking, man, this is easy money in the bag, right? Even the guy sitting next to you says, this is for the over, brother. And I say, yeah, jinxed us there. Missed it, wide left. I look at the clock, and then I double jinx myself. I said, man, they got 11:40 left in the game. They're going to score. I mean, come on. I need 2 points here. Even a safety lets me I'd still lose by the hook. So I needed a field goal. And unfortunately, they both got a couple more possessions, and nothing came of it. So got hosed on Sunday.
Well, Tennessee definitely hosed you with the 13. You can thank Chandler Jones, on pace for 75 sacks this year.
If we really look at that game, keeping Derrick Henry at 9 yards, I think the first. That Cardinals defense really stepped it up. You look at it and you almost think, did Larry Fitzgerald hamstring us because he had to get his catch game per game? He's second in line to Jerry Rice. Larry Fitzgerald has 256 consecutive games with a catch, so that's pretty important to keep going. He has to be on the field. So did he tie us up? And now that we actually have speed on the field, will this air raid work? That defensive line is nasty. They can get after the quarterback. That secondary did a lot better than I thought it would, shutting down 2 guys that are still top 10 wide receivers. So, yeah, pretty crazy. I was disappointed with the Titans' offense. But, when I actually sit back and think about it, Ryan Tannehill's a mediocre quarterback when he's under pressure. That's why he couldn't do his thing out in Miami. So take away Derrick Henry, if you find another good defense that the Titans are going to play where they can take away Derrick Henry, I think we might see that some more from Ryan Tannehill. So that's something to pay attention when you're handicapping a game.
You got hosed.
So that's it for this week. I'd like to thank my guests Charles O'Loughlin, Big Richard Martin, Ronnie McKinnon, and Gator Gates, our producer, our engineer, our editor, and everyone for listening. We'd like you to visit our brand new Covering the Field website, and we'd like to remind you listeners to email us at coveringthefield@gmail.com. Give us your feedback, your You Got Hose moments, and any other comments you'd like to give us. And a special thank you again to all the firefighters and first responders battling the Nevada and California wildfires. Hopefully you all enjoyed the show, and you'll hear us again next week on another episode of Covering the Field.
You've been listening to Covering the Field, a CM World Services and Lesage production.